My guests this afternoon are Andreas Landstedt and Toby Vigneault, winners of the Jackie McGehee Young Artist Competition, and they're performing with the New Mexico Philharmonic this Saturday night at the Rio Grande Zoo at the Hooray for Heroes concert. Andreas, tell me a little bit about the Jackie McGehee competition. Now, wasn't your first rodeo. I think you had a piece played in the Hey Mozart competition when you were younger. You won the Music Teachers National Association state competition. But tell me about the competition. How does it go? What are you playing?
For me, this competition has sort of always been the peak as far as piano competitions go within the States. The Hey Mozart was obviously very nice. And the Music Teachers National, the MTNA state competition, although I've participated in that many times, it feels, no disrespect, but almost not as big as the Jackie McGehee because concertos are almost as far as you can go in piano literature. They're kind of the top of the line and with a lot of other instruments as well. So this is actually the third time I do the competition. I did it the 2 previous years. And my older brother, Gabriel Landstedt, who has always been a pianist, and he's been doing a lot of things around the country and also around Europe and Germany and Italy. He won this competition in 2012. But I've always had a great experience whether I've won or not, which obviously this time it's very nice to win and have the opportunity to play with the Philharmonic because that's always been a dream for me.
The concerto you won the competition with was the Mendelssohn G minor concerto, and you're going to play a portion of that with the Phil as well, right?
Yeah, I played the whole concerto for the competition. They usually only let you play a single movement of the concerto, but because the Mendelssohn concerto in itself is only about 20 minutes, which is even shorter than single movements of some, say, Beethoven concertos, they let me play the whole thing for the competition. Unfortunately, for the concert, they only had time to let me play one movement. I thought about it and decided that the third movement makes most sense on its own.
Were you familiar with Mendelssohn before you played this?
No, I hadn't played any Mendelssohn before I played this. My teacher, Professor Steinbach at UNM, suggested this to me along with a few others. But Mendelssohn, he was a very young, eccentric composer, and a lot of his music is played by prodigal kids who get good when they're very young, because his music is, I would say, virtuosic for young kids. So I appreciate that joyful, kind of youthful feeling of his music.
And Toby Vigneault, bass player, you won the string part of the competition. You're going to be playing the Concerto No. 2 by Bottesini, right?
Yes.
Now, Bottesini was sort of known in his time as the Paganini of the bass. But tell me a little bit about what it's like to play a concerto for an instrument that doesn't normally stand out in front of the orchestra.
Well, it's definitely kind of weird. I guess you could say the bass is kind of an eccentric instrument, and seeing it play, as you said, like a sort of Paganini-style thing is kind of weird because you get to watch the player jumping all across the instrument, and it's very entertaining to watch. The piece itself is actually quite a good piece of literature in general, so we're pretty grateful to have a composer like Bottesini who opened up this time where people started writing for bass.
What are some of the challenges of playing the concerto? Is everything written up high on the fingerboard?
Yeah, as a bass player, you read music and you might see it being like, wow, that's incredibly high, it's in treble clef, and it's like 3 lines above the staff. But you have to remember the bass plays down an octave lower, technically, so it sounds an octave lower than what's being written. And it is incredibly hard on the bass, but it still has that low feeling to it. But approaching it, he does this stuff with crazy fast, like scale passages and jumping all across the instrument, really showing the entire range that the bass can do.
You just won a position at Santa Fe Symphony, right?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
But I've heard you play jazz bass as well. Do you find it easy to cross over between the different genres?
Yeah, I feel myself kind of feeding off of both of the styles and putting that into each one of the other ones. So like I build a lot of my improvisation and the styles off of classical technique that I learned. I put that into my jazz playing. And it's not terribly tricky once you get used to the switch, but I mean, they're both very different feels, obviously.
Toby Vigneault is the bassist and Andreas Landstedt is the pianist. They're the soloists with the New Mexico Philharmonic. This Saturday at the Rio Grande Zoo, Hooray for Heroes, a program of patriotic music and a couple of great solos as well. Saturday, 8 p.m. at the Rio Grande Zoo. Gates open at 6:30 and seats are available from lawn seating to table seating at nmphil.org. And Andreas and Toby, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.